Hello and a very warm welcome to Insight. I am Amandra Bhatt. Prime Minister Narendra Modi early this morning arrived in Kabul to a warm welcome by President Ashraf Ghani of Afghanistan. The visit had been kept under wraps for security reasons, for there had been reports that there might be a terrorist attack. The Prime Minister inaugurated the Parliament building constructed by India over the last 8 years, beginning 2007. Originally estimated to cost around $45 million, it has estimated to have exceeded $90 million. After the inauguration, he addressed a joint sitting of the two jirgas of the Afghan parliament. Besides, delegation-level talks over a range of issues have also been held. The Prime Minister is also expected to formally hand over to Afghan President Ashraf Ghani the first of the 4 Mi-25 attack helicopters India is gifting Afghanistan. Remember, the attack helicopter is going to be the first lethal military hardware India is giving to Afghanistan, at least after the Taliban takeover of the country in 1996. In the course of next 60 minutes or so, we discuss the significance of Prime Minister Modi's visit to Afghanistan and its implications for India-Afghan relations. And to discuss the implications of the Prime Minister's Afghanistan visit, we have with us in the studios an eminent panel. Please welcome. We are also joined by Dr. Sreeram Chaulia. He's a Dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Welcome to the program, Dr. Chaulia. Right, Prime Minister Modi there speaking in Kabul this morning, stressing upon the importance of human resources for the Afghan society and the role India is playing in institution building as well as training and capacity building of the human resource. Professor Chaulia, your first thoughts on the Prime Minister's visit?
Yeah, I think the timing is good because they need a major morale booster right now. Taliban offensive both in the north and in the south in Helmand has intensified, and there's facing a lot of casualties. The Afghan security forces, the body count has really gone up this year, and even though it started snowing, I mean, it doesn't seem like the fighting season is stopping. So clearly the state is under a lot of pressure to respond. The loss of Kunduz was a major embarrassment, and in the east there is a talk of the so-called Islamic State in Nangarhar province bordering Pakistan, replacing the old Taliban, which is basically a splinter faction. So in terms of and also the exodus of young people, I mean, if you look at it, like thousands of young people who are without opportunities. Prime Minister mentioned human resources, I think appropriately, because that is where we can make a big contribution, because otherwise the desperation levels are quite high. So of course the state has not collapsed, as some people had feared after the American combat withdrawal, but it is, with the backs to the wall. And in many ways, I think at this time,
and many are questioning whether it can survive.
No, but I think it will. But the question is, it's like a shell, right? Like the ability to control beyond the urban centers is quite low. And as I said, the northern offensive really shocked everyone, because that is not a traditionally Pashtun majority area where Taliban is supposed to enjoy. But even in Faryab, even in Jawzjan, of course in Kunduz we have seen this.
Ambassador Karju wants to come.
No, but Kunduz has a very, very significant Pashtun pockets, and they have troubled, those Pashtun pockets have troubled all governments.
True.
Which are,
but it was not it was people had expected there would not be a large-scale northern offensive, but it has happened this year, and it has surprised and taken them by shock. And now they're trying to recover ground. So I think the Prime Minister's visit today will make a difference in the sense that we are committing, as you mentioned, the attack helicopters from Russia, and General Dostum, who controls the northern provinces, is also very close to the Russians. He's been to Russia recently, and he also has a lot of channels with us. And so I think we, whatever support we can give in militarily, we are going to train their Air Force personnel also. And interestingly, even though the US has pumped in like hundreds of billions of dollars in military assistance, it's not really been able to beef up their Air Force sufficiently. There are complaints about the shoddy old used aircraft that have been given to the Afghans. So I think if we are giving high-tech Russian weapons with Russian consent, it will help create some kind of deterrence. As far as the civilian side goes, yes, I think we need to do more, and the opening of the parliament is great, but I will emphasize training of civil servants, training of youth. These are things where people, they naturally look to India. As ambassadors were mentioning, the love for India is deeply rooted, because this is the freer and more moderate and more tolerant option to their immediate neighbor. And in fact, Prime Minister said today that there are some people who don't want us to be here. And obviously it's a reference to Pakistan. But we are still here because the Afghans want us, right? So I think it is going to actually give spine and hopefully some spirit and sense of hope for the Afghans who are right now fighting a very stiff battle.
Professor Chaulia, would you like to comment on that? India's decision to supply Afghanistan with attack helicopters?
Yeah, sure. I mean, self-reliance is important, and we've always said, it should be Afghan-led, Afghan-driven, and we've always believed that their sovereignty must be strengthened through these means. I think I will agree with Ambassador Kajju that the overall game plan has always been for NATO forces to keep Afghanistan dependent. And in a way, even though Obama has been in a withdrawal mode, the long-term strategy is that it should be more like a under tutelage. And in fact, they are not actually surprised or totally displeased that the Afghans are rattled right now. They want to be called back, and to say that, listen, without you we cannot survive. So they want Afghans to remain dependent on the Western military support, like a satellite state. And I think our objective has always been to make it stand up for its own rights, and therefore I think in a way there must be some kind of a transition where we'll have to take on more and more responsibilities gradually. Of course, we will never send boots on the ground. But short of that, right now the need of the hour increasing. Unfortunately, the Chinese have high capacity, but because they are so much in thrall with the Pakistani agenda, that they are not able to really beef up the Afghan state. I mean, they are only talking about the so-called backdoor negotiations involving Taliban factions and the Afghan government, and the Chinese claim that now they are driving the whole peace process forward. That's how they want to see it. But frankly, they are not in any way building the capacity of the Afghan state. They've invested some in mining and so on, but overall, you see, it's pretty low. So in a way, the Chinese talk big about South-South cooperation and so on, but in reality, they play very, very hard realpolitik. And what's happening right there is, if not the Americans, the next highest capacity state which has got a lot of resources is China, and it's not stepping up. So it's got to be India that's the only alternative for them in the long run.
Okay, but Professor Chaulia, what is the role then do you foresee for India in Afghanistan, which is at the moment going through its worst crisis since 2001?
I think it won't be a bad idea for us to launch a new initiative. Like we have now to create a political settlement, they've made this international support group for Syria. They've been meeting in Vienna and all that, and there's a hope of a ceasefire and all that. And it includes Iran, which had earlier been excluded. So I think we're making some minimal progress on the Syrian front. And likewise, the initiative which has been, in a way stalled for peace, which was led by the Chinese and the Pakistanis with American blessings, has not gone very far, but they want to restart it, which is okay. I mean, they need to have channels and keep on talking to some section of Taliban or the other. But I think it's good if we can, also convene some kind of a Friends of Afghanistan, because the Heart of Asia group, the Istanbul process, is the nearest to that. But as we have mentioned, it's been pretty disappointing. It's mostly focused on economic, interlinkages. So if we can, also use our convening power and our restarting of the convergence with Afghanistan after Ashraf Ghani went astray. Now is the time for us to propose maybe some kind of new grouping where we can have continuous dialogue about taking this forward. And of course, the Taliban will not accept us for ideological reasons. But that doesn't mean that we should stop trying. So while we have the bilateral thing going, and we are doing it well, I think now with the helicopters and the other civilian side, we should also think about bringing together like-minded parties. We've always spoken about a regional endgame and a regional solution. The Americans are anyway not helping much now. So I think it's a time for us to do something, which is a kind of a forum or some kind of a platform where India has convening power, where we can invite people, where Ghani should be, of course, with us, and I think he will be now as he sees the Pakistani game, blowback effect of befriending the Pakistanis. So I think in a way we have the opportunity to steer it in a particular direction now, and we should take some proactive multilateral diplomatic